Hey there! My name is Adriana, and let me tell you about something that changed my life forever. I was kicked out of my own home by my sister, but what she didn't know was that I'd been secretly paying for her tuition all along. Sounds crazy, right? Imagine being mistreated by your own family while carrying their burdens in silence. Why would a family do this to one of their own? Before we dive in, I have to ask, have you ever been betrayed by the people you loved most? Time are you listening to this, and where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. I really want to know. I stood in the kitchen, the hum of the coffee maker filling the quiet of the morning. It was a routine, one that I had done countless times before, but today something felt off. I could feel the tension, thick like fog, hanging in the air. As I poured the coffee into my favorite mug, I tried to push the feeling aside. I wasn't prepared for what was about to happen. Hannah walked in, her footsteps sharp against the floor. She always had a way of commanding attention, even in the most mundane moments. I looked up briefly, nodding in acknowledgement, but before I could say a word, she slid a piece of paper across the kitchen counter toward me. "Here," she said, her tone flat. "These are the new house rules." I stared at the list. Rules. For a house I had been helping to pay for. Rules that suddenly felt like a restriction on my very existence. I scanned the list, my stomach tightening as I read. No late-night visitors, no talking after 10 p.m. And the one that stung the most: if you can't follow the rules, you need to leave. My pulse quickened. "You can't be serious," I said, though my voice was steady, betraying none of the anger that was building inside me. Hannah didn't even blink. "You're living here rent-free. It's the least you could do," she said, crossing her arms over her chest like she was giving me an ultimatum. Her eyes were cold, as though this was all perfectly reasonable. I could feel my heart pounding. I'd spent years quietly managing everything, paying bills, handling the groceries, taking care of the family's needs, while trying not to rock the boat. But now this wasn't just a set of rules. This was control. This was her way of asserting her dominance in a house I had just as much right to be in. I pushed the paper back toward her. "I'm not playing this game," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. "I won't follow your rules, and I'm certainly not leaving. You're not in charge here." I could see the surprise flash in her eyes, but she quickly masked it with a shrug. "You're not taking this seriously." "I am, and I'm not going to pretend that I am," I said, walking away. My footsteps were slow, deliberate, but inside, everything was a storm. I didn't know if it was the shock or the betrayal, but I couldn't ignore the knot in my stomach. I had always been the responsible one, the one who handled everything. I paid the bills, made sure the house stayed afloat. No one knew, though, not even Hannah. She had no idea that I was quietly paying her tuition every month without fail. I reached the door to the living room and paused. The weight of the moment settled on me, and I knew that I couldn't let this go. There was more to this story, more than anyone could ever imagine, more than Hannah would ever understand. But for now, I needed to step back and let the silence speak. I stood there, my back to her, contemplating how much longer I could keep everything together before it all unraveled. The moment hung in the air. The tension between us had shifted, and I couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get worse. The phone call had come early, just as I was finishing my coffee. My mother's voice was high with urgency. "Adriana, you need to come home. There's something we need to talk about." I didn't respond immediately. I didn't know how to. Was this it? Was this the moment everything would change? All I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. For the past few weeks, I had been watching, silently, as Hannah tried, unsuccessfully, to juggle the financial mess she had created. The overdue bills were piling up, the electricity was shut off, and the house was starting to look like it was falling apart. The sink in the kitchen had started leaking, the lights flickered in and out, and the water had been cut off for 2 days before I had to step in and deal with it, quietly covering the costs without a word to anyone. But today, as I sat at the table, a heavy feeling settled in my chest. I knew it wasn't going to stay like this forever. Hannah was already panicking. I could see it in the way she rushed around the house, trying to fix things that were broken in ways she didn't understand. Her attempts were futile. And the more she struggled, the more frustrated she became. She walked into the living room that evening, her eyes wild, her movements sharp and erratic. "I don't know what to do, Adriana," she snapped, her voice cracking. "I can't make this work. I don't know how." I was silent, watching her from my spot on the couch. I'd been expecting this, and yet it stung to hear her admit it. For months, I had quietly been the one keeping everything afloat, but now it was clear. She couldn't manage it on her own. "You should have thought about that before you started making rules for everyone," I finally said, my voice calm, but my words loaded with the weight of all the unspoken resentment that had been building up. Hannah's face twisted in frustration, but it wasn't just anger I saw in her eyes. It was pride. Pride that wouldn't let her admit she needed help, even when she was drowning in it. "I don't need your charity," she said, her voice defensive. "I can fix this. I just need time." I didn't respond. I knew it wasn't just time she needed. It was someone to take control and deal with the mess she'd made. And no matter how much I resented the position I was being forced back into, I knew I couldn't just watch her fail. "Fine," I said quietly, standing up from the couch. "I'll help you, but you need to listen to me this time. I'm not going to sit here and let everything fall apart." The words hit her like a slap, but it wasn't the anger I had expected. She looked more defeated than anything else. The fight drained out of her, and she nodded slowly, her eyes avoiding mine. I had no idea if this was the right thing to do, but at that moment, I couldn't walk away from her. I had been the one to hold everything together for years, and even though I didn't want to do it again, I didn't have a choice. Later that night, I found myself sitting across from her at the kitchen table. The papers were spread out in front of us. Bills, overdue notices, shut-off warnings. I wanted to say something harsh, but instead, I asked her, "Do you know how bad this has gotten?" She glanced at the papers, her face tight with shame. "I didn't mean for it to be like this. I thought I could handle it." "You can't," I said, my voice soft but firm. "Not yet. You don't even know where to start. Let me handle it for now. I'll take care of the finances, but you need to learn how to manage them." Hannah stared at me, her face a mixture of relief and resistance. "I don't want you to do it for me. I can figure it out." I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to yell. "I'm not doing it for you, Hannah. I'm doing it because I've been doing it for years without you even knowing." Her eyes widened at my words, and she sat back in her chair. "What?" I didn't answer. I just stared at her, knowing that deep down she had no idea. I had been silently paying her tuition, covering her bills, all while she lived her life as if nothing ever went wrong. The resentment I felt was overwhelming, but it was also familiar. It was the burden I had taken on for so long, and now it was all coming to light. I stood up, pushing the papers closer to her. "You don't have to like it, but you need to get it together. If you want to keep living here, if you want any of this to work, you need to face the truth." She looked down at the papers, her shoulders slumping, defeated. "I'll try," she said quietly, but the words felt empty, like they were more for her than for me. As I walked out of the room, I heard the phone ring. My mother's name flashed across the screen. I didn't want to pick it up, but I knew I had to. "Adriana," my mother's voice came through the phone, strained. "I need you to come home. It's important." I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach. I wasn't ready for this, but somehow I knew it was coming. And whatever was waiting for me at home would change everything. The house was vibrating with loud music, laughter, and the unmistakable sounds of chaos. A party. Hannah's party. I had tried to stay out of it, retreating to the quiet of my room, but the sounds of glasses clinking and people shouting dragged me back into the mess. I sat on the couch, quietly observing the wild scene unfolding before me. I could feel the weight of the bills we hadn't paid pressing down on me with every passing moment. The house was a disaster. Dirty cups, empty bottles, and trash strewn across the living room floor. It felt like a reflection of everything that was wrong in this house, everything I had been silently trying to hold together. Hannah, completely oblivious to the destruction around her, was in the middle of it all, laughing with friends. The air was thick with drunken energy, but to me, it felt suffocating. The music blared in my ears, and for a moment I wanted to scream. The chaos wasn't just from the party. It was the result of years of neglect, financial instability, and a lack of responsibility. And it wasn't just Hannah who was to blame. As I watched her, I began to realize that the problem wasn't just with her. It wasn't even just about the mess or the unpaid bills. It was about the fact that no one in this house seemed to care. Not my parents, not even Hannah. I had been silently handling everything for so long, covering costs without asking for anything in return. But it was never enough. I stepped outside for a breath of fresh air, needing a break from the noise. As I sat on the porch, I dialed Natalie's number. She picked up on the first ring. "Adriana, what's up?" she asked, her voice calm, familiar. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Everything's falling apart, Nat. It's like no one in my family even knows or cares what's going on. Hannah's throwing this ridiculous party, and I'm stuck trying to figure out how to fix everything." I could hear the frustration in my own voice, the pent-up anger and resentment I'd been trying to bury for so long. "It's not just Hannah. It's everyone. They have no clue how bad things are. My parents, they don't get it. They don't even seem to care about the money problems, about how the bills are stacking up." There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear Natalie processing my words. "I'm sorry, Adriana, you're doing all this on your own, huh?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Yeah, always have. And the worst part? I'm not even sure they'd care if I stopped. It feels like I'm invisible sometimes." "I get it," Natalie said softly. "But you can't keep doing this alone. You're not a superhero." I bit my lip, staring at the chaos unfolding inside the house. I don't know what else to do. If I stop, everything falls apart. And if I keep going, I'm the one who gets left holding the pieces. As the conversation ended, I felt no better, but I knew one thing for sure. This was my mess now. There was no one else to clean it up. I hung up and went back inside, my heart heavy with everything that had been said. The party was winding down, the noise dying down as people started filtering out. That's when I saw Mrs. Coleman, our next-door neighbor, standing on the porch with a disapproving look on her face. She had always been the kind of person who couldn't stand disorder, and tonight, her gaze was sharp, like a needle poking at the seam of my carefully crafted facade. "Adriana," she called out to me, her voice laced with concern. "This party's gotten out of hand. Your parents know what's going on?" I blinked, caught off guard. I hadn't expected her to be the one to break the silence. I don't think they do," I said, my voice cracking slightly. Her eyes softened for a moment, but the disappointment in her expression was clear. "Someone needs to step up, dear, before it all falls apart." The weight of her words hit me hard. As I looked around at the mess inside, I realized she was right. It wasn't just the bills or the house, it was everything. My family was blind to the reality of what was happening. They had no idea what was at stake, and no one seemed to care. I watched Mrs. Coleman leave, her footsteps fading into the distance, and a cold wave of realization washed over me. I wasn't just cleaning up after my sister's mistakes. I was cleaning up after my whole family. In that moment, I knew that if I didn't take control, everything would collapse. And no one, not even my parents, would care. It wasn't just Hannah I had to fix. It was everyone. And I was the only one who seemed to realize it. The dinner table was unusually quiet. Normally, our family would be talking over each other, trying to get their words in during a meal. But tonight, there was a palpable stillness. I could feel the tension building in the air. My father was fidgeting with his utensils, and my mother kept glancing at me, her eyes filled with confusion and concern. I slid the stack of papers across the table without a word. The bank statements, receipts, and proof of payments lay there like a weight, slowly sinking into the silence. The look on their faces was all I needed to know. They hadn't seen this coming. My mother's eyes widened as she looked down at the papers, her hand pausing mid-motion before she set her fork down. Dad, usually the calm one, leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. It was as if the truth I had been carrying for so long was now too much for them to comprehend. "You've been paying all of Hannah's bills?" My mother's voice cracked, her disbelief clear. It wasn't just the question, it was the way she said it. as though she couldn't fathom the magnitude of it all. I nodded, my own voice steady. Yes, tuition, utilities, all of it. I've been taking care of everything while you've been unaware. The shock on their faces was hard to watch. I had been doing this quietly for years, covering up the cracks in our family's financial situation, but I had never expected it to feel so heavy. The silence stretched between us like an endless chasm, and for the first time, I felt like the weight of it all had crushed me too. How could you? My father's voice was low, almost disbelieving. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to piece together what I had just revealed. Why didn't you tell us? I glanced at Hannah, who was sitting at the far end of the table, staring at the papers with a mix of disbelief and anger. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, I cut in, my voice growing louder. Because no one ever asks. You've been too busy, too caught up in everything else. I had to step up. Her eyes flashed with anger. Oh, don't you dare make this about me, she snapped, standing up so abruptly that her chair screeched against the floor. You've been controlling everything, keeping it all from us, and now you act like you're the hero? I stood up too, feeling the burn of her accusations sting in my chest. I didn't want to control anything. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed. But I've been carrying this burden alone, and I can't do it anymore. Hannah's face twisted with frustration. You think I asked for this? You've been shoving it in my face, acting like I'm the problem, and all the while, you've been playing martyr. The words felt like a slap, each one more painful than the last. But I didn't flinch. I had spent too many years trying to fix everything for them, only to be blamed when the truth finally came out. I never wanted to be the martyr, I said through clenched teeth. But I've been the one holding this family together, and now it's all falling apart. Her eyes filled with something between anger and guilt, but she didn't back down. You never gave me the chance to figure things out for myself. You just swooped in and saved the day, like you always do. I shook my head. You were never going to figure it out, Hannah. You never tried to. And I couldn't sit back and watch everything crumble. The room was heavy with silence as the words hung in the air. My parents were quiet, their gazes flicking between the two of us. I could feel the pressure building, like a dam ready to burst. Finally, my father spoke, his voice tight. This isn't how we do things. We should have been helping each other. We should have known. I looked at him, finally allowing the weight of my own emotions to show. I've been doing this because I didn't want to burden anyone else, but now it's clear that I can't do it alone anymore. Hannah crossed her arms, a smirk on her face, but it didn't reach her eyes. So, now you're mad at me for not being perfect? For not seeing everything you've done? No, I said quietly. I'm mad because I had to do everything myself. And now, I need to walk away from it. I need to stop pretending that I can fix this for everyone. I turned away, feeling my heart racing as I walked toward the door. The air felt thick and suffocating, and I needed space, needed to breathe without the pressure of everything pressing down on me. I left the dinner table without looking back, my footsteps echoing in the hallway. As I reached the door, I heard my father's voice, soft but firm. Adriana, wait. But I didn't turn around. I needed to let it go. I needed to do something for me for once. As I walked out the door, I felt the weight of the truth sink in. I had done it all for them, but now it was time to stop being the one who fixed everything. It was time to fix myself. I did this for all of us, I muttered under my breath, but now I need to do something for me. The air was thick with tension as I set the stack of bank statements and receipts down in front of my family. The dinner table, usually a place of casual chatter and comfort, felt like a battlefield. My heart pounded as I slid the papers across the table. It was time to face the truth. I watched my parents as they glanced down at the papers. Their faces slowly shifted from confusion to shock and finally to disbelief. They had no idea. No idea what I'd been doing behind the scenes for all these years. All the money I'd been sending, all the bills I'd been covering. The weight of the truth was now undeniable, and it hit them harder than I expected. They didn't know, and the realization stung. The silence stretched between us like a chasm, and I felt every inch of it. My mother was the first to speak, her voice breaking the stillness. "Adriana, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you let us know?" I sat back, my fingers trembling slightly as I folded my arms across my chest. "Because no one ever asked. No one ever bothered to know." My voice was steady, but inside I was on the verge of unraveling. "I've been taking care of everything. Tuition, bills, everything." I let the words sink in, watching their faces change with the dawning realization. And then, Hannah. She looked at the papers, her face hardening into a mask of anger. "You've been doing all this without telling anyone?" She spat, her voice rising. "You think I asked for this?" I clenched my jaw, fighting to keep my voice calm. "No, Hannah, I didn't think you asked for it, but I did it because someone had to. Someone had to hold this family together." Hannah shot to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Oh, so now you're the martyr, huh? You're the savior of the family?" Her eyes were blazing with fury. "You think you're better than me? That I can't handle my own life?" The words stung more than I wanted to admit. "It's not about being better, Hannah. It's about responsibility. You couldn't even keep up with your own bills." I could feel the weight of everything I'd been holding inside for years pressed down on me. This wasn't just about the money. It was about everything. The resentment, the sacrifice, the quiet frustration of always being the one to fix things. "Well, maybe you should have let me learn. Maybe you should have let me deal with my own mess." Hannah's voice cracked with emotion as she took a step forward, her hands trembling. I stood up slowly, my eyes never leaving hers. I couldn't stand by and watch everything fall apart. But now it's different. The room was heavy, and I could feel the tension thickening with every word. My father, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "We didn't know," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "We didn't know you were carrying all of this alone." It was a pathetic admission, one that cut deeper than I thought it would. I looked at him, trying to process the years of sacrifice, of doing everything to keep the house standing, and I realized how much it had taken from me. "Well, now you know," I said, my voice tinged with bitterness. "Now you know the cost of your ignorance." Hannah took a deep breath, her anger still simmering beneath the surface. "You didn't have to do it all for us. You didn't have to keep the secrets." She turned away from me, the words hanging in the air like a threat. "You've been playing the victim, but you're the one who kept it all hidden." The accusation stung, but I didn't flinch. "I kept it hidden because I thought it was my job to keep everything in order, but I can't do it anymore. I'm tired." For a long moment, no one spoke. The truth was out there now, and it was too much for anyone to fully absorb. My parents were stunned into silence, their eyes filled with confusion and regret. I wasn't sure if they were more shocked by the money or the fact that I had been silently enduring this weight for so long. Hannah's expression softened, just for a moment, but then she snapped back into her defensive stance. "I don't need you to fix everything. I can handle it," she muttered under her breath. But it was too late. The words didn't carry the same conviction as before. I turned away, my chest tight with emotions I didn't know how to deal with. I could feel my parents' eyes on me, but I didn't want to see their disappointment anymore. I didn't want to stay at that table watching everything crumble around us. "I need to go," I said, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. "I've been doing this for all of us, but now I need to do something for me." I walked out of the room, the echo of my footsteps ringing in the silence behind me. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face, but it didn't bring relief. My mind raced with the confrontation, with the truth that had just come to light. And as I walked away, I felt the weight of it all settle into my bones. There was no going back now. The moment Hannah slammed the door behind her, I knew we were at a breaking point. I could hear the sound of her shoes hitting the floor, her anger echoing through the house. My heart pounded, and for a brief second, I almost let myself feel guilty. But then the words from our argument flooded back. "Why can't you just understand?" I had begged her earlier, hoping for some semblance of peace. But peace was the last thing we had. "I'm not trying to control you, Hannah. I'm trying to help you get your life together." But it didn't matter. She wouldn't listen. She never did. I watched her pace the living room, her eyes wide with disbelief and anger. "You think you know everything. You think you're the only one with a solution?" Her voice cracked as she spat the words, her face red with rage. "I don't need you, Adriana. I don't need anyone telling me what to do anymore." My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay calm. I had spent years picking up the pieces of this broken family, but now it was clear. No matter how much I tried, Hannah wouldn't let anyone help her. "You think I'm doing this to control you?" I asked quietly, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "No, I'm doing it because I care, because I don't want to see you spiral. But you won't let anyone in." Hannah let out a harsh laugh, shaking her head. "You think I'm some helpless little girl? You think I can't handle my own life? Well, I can. I don't need you or anyone else to tell me what to do." The words stung more than they should have, but I didn't let them show. Not yet. "Then why don't you start handling your own bills, your own life?" I said, each word piercing the air like a knife. "You've been living in this fantasy that everything will just work itself out. And now look where we are. Look at what you've done." She took a deep breath, her hands shaking as she clenched them into fists. "I'm tired of being treated like I'm the problem," she spat. "You've always been the perfect one, haven't you? The one who fixes everything. But you're the one who's been hiding things from me. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you just let me figure it out?" The frustration boiled up inside me, threatening to spill over. I took a step toward her, my voice low but firm. "Because you wouldn't listen, Hannah. I've been taking care of everything and you never even noticed. You never cared enough to ask. I've been carrying this family for years." I stopped myself before I could say more. It wasn't just about the money, the bills, or the house. It was everything. It was the constant expectation that I would be the one to fix things. And then she did the unthinkable. "I'm leaving," Hannah said, her voice cold as she turned to pack her things. "I'm done with this, with all of you." The words hit me like a physical blow, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. She was leaving, just like that. It felt like a betrayal, but more than that, it felt like the final straw in a family that had already been unraveling for too long. I stood there, frozen, watching her gather her things in a frantic rush. I could feel the tears welling up behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. This wasn't the time to break down. It wasn't the time to let her see how much this hurt me. "You can't just leave, Hannah," I said, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to remain composed. "Do you really think running away from everything will fix it?" She didn't answer, just continued to stuff her clothes into a bag. My parents, who had been silent the whole time, sat in the background, clearly unsure of how to handle the situation. They had never seen me like this, angry, hurt, and so damn tired. I felt the weight of the years, the sacrifices, the silent battles press down on me. Was I supposed to just watch her walk away? "Stop running," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "We're family, Hannah. You can't just leave every time things get tough." But she didn't listen. She grabbed her bag and walked toward the door without a second glance. I wanted to stop her. I wanted to say something that would make her stay, but I couldn't. I knew that nothing I said would make a difference now. As she stepped out the door, I was left standing there, alone. My parents were still quiet, unsure of what to say. The air was thick with the silence of a family broken by years of unspoken words and unresolved issues. I watched as Hannah disappeared down the street, the sound of her footsteps fading into the distance. Part of me felt a strange sense of relief. Maybe it was because I didn't have to carry the weight of her mistakes anymore. But the other part of me, the part that had been holding everything together, felt something much worse. Regret. I had spent so long trying to keep the peace, trying to fix everything, and now it felt like I had lost everything in the process. I turned back toward the table, where the empty chairs seemed to mock me. I had given everything for this family, and now I was left to pick up the pieces alone. "I did this for all of us," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "But now I need to do something for me." The house felt suffocating. Every breath I took seemed to echo in the silence between us. but the tension was thick enough to choke. I had known this day would come, the day I would be forced to tell my parents the truth about the financial disaster caused by Hannah's reckless spending. But now that it was here, my stomach twisted into knots, and I could barely hold my head high. I looked down at the papers in front of me. The bank statements, receipts, the proof of everything I had kept hidden for so long. Each piece felt like a weight on my chest, heavier than anything I'd ever carried. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaky but firm. They were sitting across from me, their faces expectant but confused, as if they didn't fully understand what was coming. Margaret looked up from the magazine she had been flipping through, her eyes narrowing in concern. James, ever the quiet one, had his arms crossed over his chest, waiting for me to speak. "About what?" My father's voice was low, cautious. I placed the papers on the table, one by one, watching as their faces slowly fell into confusion, then disbelief, then shock. "This," I said, tapping the papers. "This is what's been going on behind your backs. This is how bad things have gotten. This is Hannah's spending. All of it." I could feel their eyes on me, but I refused to look away. I had spent years handling this family's problems, covering up the cracks and pretending like everything was fine. But now, with the weight of all this in front of us, there was no more pretending. Margaret picked up the bank statement, her fingers trembling as she scanned the numbers. I don't understand," she said softly. "How could we not have seen this?" James rubbed his temples, his face flushed with anger and confusion. "Why didn't you say something sooner, Adriana? Why keep it a secret?" "I didn't want to burden you," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "I didn't want to make things worse, but it's too late for that now. We've reached the point of no return." I felt the weight of my words hang in the air, the silence pressing in on us. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, but I kept it contained. I wasn't going to let my frustration with them overshadow the truth that had to be told. Then came the explosion. Hannah had been sitting silently in the corner, watching the scene unfold. At first, I thought she was too stunned to react, but then her voice sliced through the room like a knife. "This is bullshit!" she screamed, slamming her fist on the table. "You all think I'm the problem? You think I'm the one who ruined everything? This is your fault too!" She turned to me, her eyes wild with fury. "You're the one who made me think everything was fine, who paid off all my bills without telling me. You kept me in the dark. You made me believe I didn't have to take responsibility." I stood there, frozen for a moment. The words stung, cutting deep into the years of frustration and sacrifice I had kept hidden. But I wasn't going to back down. Not now. "No, Hannah," I said, my voice trembling with the weight of everything I had been holding in. "This is your mess. You refused to take responsibility, and now we're all paying for it. I did what I had to do to keep things afloat, but I can't fix this for you anymore." Her face twisted in anger, her hands balled into fists at her sides. "You think you're the hero, don't you? You think you're the one who saved everyone? But all you've done is made everything worse. You think you're better than me, don't you?" She took a step forward, her eyes burning with rage. "You just wanted to be the martyr, to play the perfect daughter. Well, guess what? I'm done." The words echoed in my mind, and for a brief moment I felt as though the floor had been ripped out from under me. My sister's betrayal cut deeper than I had expected, but there was no turning back now. This was the truth, the ugly, painful truth. "Maybe you should leave," I said, my voice cold, my anger now equal to hers. "Maybe it's better this way." Hannah's eyes narrowed, and she shook her head in disbelief. "You really think that's what I'm going to do? You think I'm just going to walk away from everything like you did? You're wrong. I'm not like you, Adriana." With that, she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her with enough force to shake the walls. I didn't go after her. I couldn't. The damage had been done. The silence in the room was deafening. My parents sat there, stunned and speechless. For a moment, I felt like I was the one who had been left behind. I looked at them both, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. I've been holding this family together for too long, but I can't keep doing it. Not anymore. My parents said nothing. What was there left to say? I turned to leave, but before I reached the door, I stopped. I did this for all of us, I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. But now I need to do something for me. The weight of what I was about to do felt heavier than anything I had carried before. The time had come. For years I had lived with the secret, hidden behind the walls of our home, beneath the surface of every conversation, every strained smile. But now there was no avoiding it. The truth had to be told. I gathered the papers, letters, old receipts, evidence of every sacrifice I had made for this family. I could barely breathe as I placed them in front of me. The memories attached to each one were suffocating, but they had to be exposed. There was no other choice. I called my parents into the living room. Margaret and James came in quietly, their faces puzzled. They had no idea what I was about to say. I stood by the window, staring out at the quiet street, taking in the familiar sight that had become so foreign to me. "This has to stop," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. They both looked at me confused. "What are you talking about?" Margaret asked. "You've been acting strange lately, Adriana." I let out a breath, steadying myself. "I've been paying for everything. Everything. The bills, Hannah's tuition, everything. And you never knew. You never asked. But I've been covering for all of you. For years." The words felt like a confession, but also like a liberation. A part of me had always wanted to scream the truth, to say it all out loud, but the rest of me had been too scared to tear apart the fragile image of the family we once had. I slid the papers across the table, watching their faces fall as they realized the truth. Margaret's hand shook as she picked up a bank statement. James's eyes widened in disbelief. They didn't speak, they just stared at the figures, the total amounts, the reality. "You've been paying for all of this?" Margaret finally whispered. Her voice cracked. I nodded, the lump in my throat almost choking me. "Yes, all of it. And while I did that, I had to watch everything fall apart. Hannah, especially." There was a long silence. James looked at me, his face pale. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His usual calm composure was gone, replaced by something darker, guilt perhaps. Hannah had been sitting off to the side, watching the scene unfold. At first, I thought she was too stunned to react, but then I saw the storm brewing in her eyes. She stood up suddenly, her chair scraping across the floor. "This is ridiculous!" she screamed, her voice sharp and raw. "You think you can just throw everything in my face like this? I didn't ask for any of this. You made me think everything was fine while you were playing the martyr." The rage in her voice was unmistakable, but it only made me more resolute. "No, Hannah. You never wanted to take responsibility, and now you have to face the truth." Her eyes narrowed. "So you think this is all my fault? You think I'm the one who ruined everything? You're just as bad as the rest of them. You always wanted to be the hero, the good daughter. Well, congratulations. You're the one who destroyed everything, not me." The words hit like a punch, but I refused to let her see how much they hurt. "You did this, Hannah, not me. You chose this path, and I had to pick up the pieces. But I'm done. I can't do this anymore." The room fell into an eerie silence. Margaret and James were still processing, their eyes darting between Hannah and me. I could see the shame creeping into their faces, but I wasn't sure if it was too late for any of us. "You don't get it," Hannah continued, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and fear. "I'm not the one who's messed everything up. You are. You and this whole situation. You should have just let me live my life." "You're not living your life, Hannah," I shot back, my voice cold. "You're running away from it, from everything, from responsibility, from reality." For a moment, it looked like she was going to say something else, but instead, she just turned and stormed out of the room. Her footsteps echoed through the hall as she slammed the door behind her, the sound shaking the walls. I stood there, still, my mind reeling. My parents were silent, lost in their own thoughts. They hadn't said a word since the confrontation began. I could feel their guilt hanging in the air, thick and heavy. I walked away from the table, my heart racing. The air in the house felt suffocating, the silence deafening. My body was numb, my thoughts racing. "I did this for all of us," I muttered under my breath. But now, I need to do something for me. I didn't know what that meant yet. I didn't know where I would go from here, but one thing was certain. I couldn't stay in this house, in this family, pretending everything was fine. The truth had been exposed, and there was no going back. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to decide. I stood in front of my family, every word weighing heavier than the last. The silence between us felt suffocating. All those years of holding back, of silently carrying the weight of everything, it was finally coming to light. "You think you know me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to cut through the tension. "You think you understand what I've been going through, but you don't. None of you ever did." Margaret and James looked at me, their faces pale, unsure. Hannah, standing off to the side, crossed her arms defensively, her gaze never meeting mine. "I paid for everything," I continued, steadying myself. "All of it. Every bill, every expense. I kept this family afloat, and none of you ever asked how." The words seemed to hang in the air, each syllable more damning than the last. Their eyes flickered, searching for a response. But what could they say? The truth was undeniable. "You paid for my tuition?" Hannah's voice cut through the silence, a mixture of disbelief and anger. Her eyes were wide, her expression hardening. "You never told me." "No, I never did," I replied, my voice steady now. "Because I didn't want you to feel guilty. I didn't want you to think I was doing this out of spite. But the truth is, I've been doing it because I thought I had to. Because you wouldn't, and because I felt like it was my responsibility." Margaret's hands trembled as she reached for the receipts I had laid on the table. James looked away, his face unreadable. "I never knew," Margaret murmured, almost to herself. I had no idea. Her words were filled with regret, and it stung, because it was too late for regrets. I had been carrying the weight of this family, and now they were just discovering the extent of it. I had sacrificed everything, but it wasn't enough to bring the peace I thought it would. Hannah's frustration boiled over. "So you think it's all my fault?" she shouted. "You think I ruined everything? You never let me be who I am. You played the martyr for so long, and now you're just throwing it all in my face." Her words struck deep, but I didn't flinch. "You can blame me all you want, Hannah. But the truth is, you've been running from your responsibilities. I was trying to help you, but I can't do it anymore. Not when you refuse to see the damage you've done." Her face twisted in anger, and she turned away, pacing back and forth. "You were never there for me. You were always trying to control me, to make me feel small. And now, you want to act like you're the one who was wronged?" The argument raged on, each of us standing our ground. But the rift between us grew deeper with every word. I had been trying to fix everything for so long, but it had broken beyond repair. I could feel it, the final fracture in the foundation of our family. "I've done enough," I whispered, the weight of the revelation heavy on my chest. "I've given everything, and for what? To be looked at like I'm the villain in this family? It's time for me to let go. I've been holding on to something that's already gone." The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret and James sat frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. Their guilt hung in the air like a thick fog. Hannah, still angry, wouldn't meet my gaze. I turned away, my heart heavy, my mind racing. The years of trying to fix something that wasn't fixable had taken their toll. And now, as I stood at this crossroads, I realized that the only way to move forward was to walk away. As I left the room, I heard Margaret's soft voice behind me. "Adriana," but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop, because I knew that no matter what, the past would never be something I could go back to. It was over. The damage was done, and the only way I could heal was to leave it behind. I stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom. It was bittersweet, but it was mine. The future was uncertain, but I knew one thing for sure. The past no longer had a hold on me. As I stand here today, looking back on the journey I've shared with you, I realize that life isn't always about the sacrifices we make. It's about understanding their true worth. The hardest lessons are often the most rewarding. We spend so much time trying to please others, trying to fix things that aren't ours to fix. But at the end of the day, the only person who can truly heal is you. I've learned that forgiveness, both for others and for yourself, is the key to moving forward. And sometimes, walking away is the most powerful decision you can make. It's not about giving up, it's about choosing peace over pain. So here's a question for you. What are you holding on to that's only weighing you down? What do you need to let go of to move forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you found something meaningful in this story, please subscribe and hit the bell to stay tuned for more stories. If this video touched your heart, let me know with a comment or just tell me where you're watching from. If you didn't like it, let me know why. Your feedback matters. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to connect with you in the next one.